Welcome, and thank you for clicking on this video. Welcome to episode number 3 in a series where I am checking out and comparing multiple different brands of short-scale bass strings. In this episode, we're going to be checking out the Sunbeams from DR Strings, and we're going to compare them with the high beams that I featured in episode number 2. Let's check it out. So in episode number 2, we checked out the DR high beams, and those were stainless steel strings over a round core. And those had a nice grindy, pingy type tone that you typically associate with stainless steel strings. Now that kind of bright, zingy, and aggressive sound might not be for everyone, and certainly for some genres of music that require a rounder, fatter bottom, the high beams may not be best suited for. Enter the DR Sunbeams. These are nickel-plated strings, but unlike the more typical nickel-plated strings, these feature a round core, which might make them more flexible and lighter to play. This is a short scale version, gauges 105 to 45. In this episode, we're going to be comparing the DR Sunbeams up against the DR high beams, so we can best hear the difference between nickel-plated strings compared to stainless steel strings. In the playing example today, we're going to have several passes. In the first set, we're going to only feature the neck P pickup, and we will have the tone knob at 100% and then at 50. And then in the latter half, we'll have both the P and the J pickups running together, again with tone knob running at 100 and then at 50%. The signal chain is identical in all of these playing examples. And similar to episode number 2, the pickup height is the same with both of these sets of strings. All right, let's hear these Sunbeams. Please let me know what you thought of the tones by leaving a comment below. Let's first talk about the packaging of these Sunbeams. These come in a very similar packaging as the DR high beams. similar type box, different color. And it also has the corrosion-proof envelopes like all the other DR strings. Now looking at the string wound length of these Sunbeams, there was a difference between these in comparison to the high beams. Now just to quickly recap episode number 2, what I found with the high beams is that the string wound length for all 4 strings were different. Have a look at this photo, and you will notice that the string wound lengths for the E, A, and D strings are very similar, unlike the high beams from episode number 2. Just like the high beams, however, the string wound length for the E string measured about 33¼ inches, and the first step taper was right at the level of the tuning peg instead of between the nut and the tuner. In terms of string appearance, now this is not really an important factor, but it's something interesting to note. These strings look much more polished and kind of a shiny silver type color compared to the DR high beams. The high beams had a bit of a more dull, more matte type reflection on the strings, and they appear slightly darker. The Sunbeams, however, look more like your typical nickel round wound strings. Have a look at this photo. Now in terms of playing feel, these Sunbeams felt very different compared to the high beams. These are much smoother on the fingers, much easier to play from a friction point of view. And in general, I felt these Sunbeams to be quite a bit easier to play under my fingers compared to the high beams. Most likely as a product of these Sunbeams being over a round core. In general, I also felt that the playing perceived tension of these strings to be a little slinkier and slightly looser compared to the more typical hex core nickel round wounds, such as the Dario XLs. So under the fingers, these were easier to bend, easier to fret. This is all very subtle, of course, but overall, I felt these Sunbeams were very comfortable and very easy to play. Now, let's talk about the tonality of these strings. Where the high beams had that kind of bright, aggressive, zingy high end, these Sunbeams had a much more rounded high end. The mid-range was also quite different. I felt that the Sunbeams had a bit of a mid-range honkiness and a bit of a hump to it in comparison to the high beams. The low end was similar, but I felt overall the Sunbeams were a tad warmer in the lows compared to the high beams. The one catch to the Sunbeams I felt though, is I felt the strings sounded a little bit more compressed than what I would have liked. And what I mean by that is, even if you kind of really dig in, the Sunbeams don't quite give you the same snap and the dynamic range that the high beams gave me. So if you're really looking for a big dynamic range, perhaps the high beams would be more for you. These Sunbeams overall just felt a little more squished and a little more compressed compared to the high beams. So who are the DR Sunbeams for? I think these strings excel at being really easy to play and comfortable to play under the fingers. And for those looking for a more mellow, less aggressive sound compared to the high beams, then the Sunbeams might fit that bill. Thank you very much for checking out this video. In the next episode, I'm going to feature a short scale set of nickel round wound strings from Dunlop. And we'll see whether or not nickel round wound strings from different companies will sound any different. Stay tuned. Thank you so much for checking out this video. Peace.